Hello, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. We're talking about my favorite legacy deck, and we are going to get right into it. We've got four colors of beautiful Delver right here for your viewing entertainment. We will start with the basic outline of the deck. We've got four of the best card in Legacy. We've got four of a blue Flying Wild Nacatl. We've got four of a fake Brainstorm. That's basically the core of a Delver deck. We're moving on down to our Disruption package. Spell Pierce is it's fallen out of favor among some players of Grixis Delver strategies, but I quite enjoy it as additional hate against combo decks while still being flexible enough in a variety of matchups. It's an easy card to board out against some of the creature-centric strategies of the format, but I think when comparing the Spell Pierces to a card like Cabal Therapy in concert with Young Pyromancer, I enjoy the Spell Pierces a little bit more because they don't force me to play kind of at sorcery speed. I enjoy playing more of my cards as flash threats, flash answers. Just makes things less nerve-wracking for me to hope that my opponent doesn't just top deck something awesome. We've also got four Dazes. Daze is one of the best cards in Legacy. A free counterspell that does not cost you an extra card is exactly what these Delver decks want. If you're on the play, you lead off with a Deathrite into a Daze into a Wasteland plus a Delver. Well, you are probably going to win that one. Now, I have three copies of Young Snappy over here, and the thing about Snapcaster Mage is that it is very good at increasing the virtual density of either removal versus aggro decks or of counter spells versus combo decks. When you have Flusterstorms that you're boarding it against combo as well as your Spell Pierces, you suddenly with Snapcaster Mage have upwards of 8 quote-unquote counter spells that are not Daze or Force of Will. So 8 paid for counter spells that give you a huge portion of your deck to interact with your opponent. There are very, very few dead draws against a deck like Storm in the post-board scenarios. We're also looking at 2 True-Name Nemesis, and the thing about this card is it ebbs and flows with the metagame. It was excellent when it came out. Then people started playing a lot of things to answer it or go over or around it, but I have noticed that Miracles has cut their Council's Judgment, leaving them only with 4 Terminus as a real out to True-Name Nemesis, at least in the main deck, and as such, a big part of your game plan against a Miracles opponent is resolve True-Name Nemesis and counter every Terminus you can. And the True-Name Nemesis is just going to keep on trucking through over and over again, and it will win the game. Force of Will. I've heard that this card is important in Legacy. I think that it makes sense to play 4 copies. So that is what we've got for the blue spells. We also have 2 copies of the Fishy Fishy, which is a great card in the mirror match kind of scenarios. It's a good card against any deck that does not have access to Swords to Plowshares. Against Miracles, against Stoneblade, not quite as good, but it makes up for it by being so impressive against Shardless Bug or in mirror match scenarios. I thought it was just too powerful not to include as a complement to True-Name Nemesis, as like a fatty that we could use to take over games. It's also quite good, incidentally, against Eldrazi. 4 copies of Lightning Bolt is a major key to success with this deck. You find yourself needing a 1-mana removal spell? Well, Lightning Bolt is the one for the job. You need a little bit of extra reach to end the game. Lightning Bolt, frequently Bolt, Snap Bolt, things like that will end the game quickly, especially when combined with this next little fella, Mr. Deathrite Shaman, who yeah, I don't really know what more there needs to be said about this Magic card. It is just really, really, really good for 1 mana. It does a lot for you. Probably the best creature in the deck. It's hard to say, but certainly better than Delver of Secrets on the first turn. Just because getting out to a mana advantage in a deck like this that relies on cheap, tempo-efficient spells, as well as cantrips to find all of the right threats and right answers, getting out to a mana advantage to let you cast 3-4 spells a turn is huge. When on turn 2, you're going Ponder into Bolt on their creature into Delver of Secrets, or Wastelanding and playing another threat, that's just too much. That's just really insurmountable. We're also playing 3 Abrupt Decay, and this makes our mana base challenging, is the word I would use. But Abrupt Decay is very good at what it does, which is it kills counterbalance. That's important because that's generally the best way that the Miracles decks have of beating you. And in addition, considering that you have 3 Snapcaster Mages, you are now looking at a total of 10 serviceable main deck removal spells, which is way, way more than other Delver decks have. Generally, they're working with maybe 5 4 Lightning Bolts plus a Dismember, or 6 4 Lightning Bolts plus a Dismember plus a Forked Bolt, something along those lines. The fact that we have access to so many that as the game goes on, we are more likely to have our creatures stick, means that we are squarely advantaged in the various semi-mirrors, except if our opponent is casting too many huge Gurmag Anglers. Gurmag Angler is the card we need to counter with Force of Will, or answer with our own Gurmag Angler or our own True-Name Nemesis, because we can handle anything else. We have an embarrassment of removal, but we cannot handle opposing Gurmag Anglers. Part of the reason why I think Gurmag Angler is just so darn good. Then we got a mana base. Pretty standard mana base. We have 8 fetch lands. Then we have 2 tropical islands, 2 underground seas, 2 volcanic islands, 4 wastelands. Beautiful, clean, crisp. We have the 3rd underground sea because I do not want to be wasted off of black mana by a wasteland happy opponent. Black mana, I believe, is the most important secondary color in the deck, as it allows you to cast Deathrite and Gurmag Angler. Red is important, but there's only 4 red cards in the whole deck, and green is a light splash for Abrupt Decay, but black I think is the most important color. After blue, of course, which is the most important color in Legacy and Magic in some respects. But let's look at the sideboard here. We've got 2 copies of Perennial All-Star Flusterstorm to come in against combo decks, replacing some of our excess removal spells. We've got 1 Dismember as Gurmag Angler, anti-hate. It's also a fine 8th removal spell to bring in against a deck like Infect. 2 Painful Truths helps us grind hard against decks like Shardless Bug or Miracles. Snapcastering a Painful Truth, so that's just as good as Shardless Agent into Ancestral Vision. We can grind just as hard as those decks can, but we have a lower curve, which is exactly where I want to be in this format. We have 2 Thoughtseizes. I like Thoughtseize better than Cabal Therapy because we don't have Gitaxian Probe. If we were to play Gitaxian Probe, we might be able to justify more therapies, but at that point it's a different deck, and I don't love exactly what that deck is doing compared to what this deck is doing. The nice thing about playing 3 Snapcasters main is we get 4 surgical extractions in our sideboard, because the fact that we have all this extra removal spell density means that we don't have to clog our board with too many more removal spells. We can play 4 surgical extractions, and actually, with the assistance of this magic card, which we have 2 of in the sideboard, we actually have a favorable matchup against lands in post-sideboard games, which is really unusual for a Delver deck, and I think it's very nice. Locally, the East Coast metagame has a lot of lands decks. So if you are not as scared of facing against a lands opponent, you can board out. You can not play one of the surgical extractions and play a Murderous Cut in its stead as another Gurmag Angler answer. But I enjoy 4 surgicals and 2 needles. It gives me a lot of confidence going up against any deck that's employing its graveyard. Reanimator becomes kind of a joke with this much hate for it. And then, of course, we have this little number, which is not very... it's unexpected in a deck like this, and I understand why. I mean, we're not playing Stoneforge Mystic, so clearly there's less of an incentive to play this powerful equipment because you can't search it up. But the fact of the matter is that this card just invalidates half the format if you can stick it on a creature. Like, this card says, I win the game if you stick it on a creature in any creature matchup. So elves, Death and Taxes, Infect, the mirror matches of various stripes, semi-mirrors of various stripes. It's great on a True-Name Nemesis, duh. It is just excellent against a wide swath of the format. It's good against Burn, incidentally. It's just doing so much for us, and I don't know why people aren't employing it a little bit more in their Delver decks as part of a transformational kind of go bigger, kind of turn into a weird Stoneforge-less Stoneblade deck. I think it's pretty nice. So we're going to be working with this deck today, and I look forward to seeing you in the games. So let's get right on it.